Hello, settle in comfortably, wrap yourself up warmly, and let the gentle whisper of stories carry you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Imagine standing in a primeval swamp, the air thick with humidity, the scent of decay and lush vegetation heavy in the lungs. Above you, something large, segmented, and iridescent winged casts a fleeting shadow. This isn't a science fiction fantasy. This was Earth, nearly 300 million years ago, during the Carboniferous period. For millennia, our planet has been synonymous with the age of dinosaurs. Yet, long before the first sauropod lumbered through ancient forests, an equally astonishing era unfolded: the age of giant insects. The scientific community identifies the late Carboniferous and early Permian periods, roughly 320 to 250 million years ago, as the zenith of arthropod gigantism. Fossil evidence, meticulously unearthed from sites like the Mazon Creek Lagerstätte in Illinois, or the vast coal seams of Europe, consistently reveals creatures far exceeding their modern counterparts in size. Consider Meganeura monyi, a dragonfly relative. Its wingspan, estimated from fossil impressions, could reach an astounding 75 centimeters, nearly 30 inches. Modern dragonflies, in comparison, rarely exceed 15 centimeters. Then there was Arthropleura, a millipede-like creature whose fossilized tracks and body segments suggest lengths of up to 2.6 meters, over 8 feet, making it the largest known terrestrial invertebrate of all time. The prevailing scientific consensus attributes this remarkable growth spurt to a unique atmospheric composition. During the Carboniferous, Earth's atmosphere boasted an oxygen concentration far higher than today's 21%. Some estimates suggest oxygen levels peaked at around 35%. This hyperoxic environment significantly impacted arthropod respiration. Insects, lacking lungs, rely on a tracheal system, a network of tubes that deliver oxygen directly to tissues. In a high-oxygen world, these tracheal tubes could function more efficiently, allowing for larger body sizes without the metabolic strain that would prove fatal in today's lower oxygen levels. Research by geochemists and paleobotanists, analyzing ancient amber and isotopic ratios in fossilized plant matter, provides strong evidence for these elevated oxygen levels. Furthermore, the luxuriant Carboniferous forests, dominated by colossal lycopods, horsetails and ferns, provided an unparalleled abundance of food and fewer large terrestrial predators. The tetrapods, the early amphibians and reptiles, were still evolving and had not yet diversified into the formidable predators that would later emerge. This combination of oxygen-rich air, abundant resources, and reduced predation pressure created a perfect incubator for insect gigantism. The study of these ancient arthropods is not merely a fascinating glimpse into the past. It provides crucial insights into the intricate relationship between atmospheric composition, ecological dynamics, and evolutionary trajectories, reminding us of Earth's ever-changing, dynamic history. While Meganeura and Arthropleura captivate with their sheer scale, they represent just two facets of a remarkably diverse insect megastructure. The Carboniferous and early Permian saw the proliferation of various arthropod groups, each pushing the boundaries of size. Consider the ancient roaches, such as species within the order Blattodea, whose fossilized remains indicate individuals reaching lengths of up to 10 centimeters, 4 inches, significantly larger than most contemporary cockroaches. These detritivores played a crucial role in breaking down the vast amounts of organic matter, contributing to the incredible carbon sequestration that defines the period's coal measures. The towering forests of club moss trees, such as lepidodendron and sigillaria, could reach heights of 30 meters, 100 feet. Amidst these colossal plants, the atmosphere would have been noticeably different. The dense canopy filtered sunlight, creating a perpetually humid, low-light environment at ground level. This environment, rich in decaying plant matter, provided ideal conditions for detritivorous insects and their predators. Imagine the rustle of massive millipedes like Arthropleura navigating the forest floor, their numerous legs propelling them through the undergrowth, foraging on the nutrient-rich detritus. Their presence was not merely incidental. They were integral to the ecosystem's energy flow and nutrient cycling. Paleoentomologists, studying fossilized impressions and coprolites, fossilized feces, continue to piece together the feeding strategies and ecological roles of these ancient giants. Some evidence suggests that certain large insects, like the early ancestors of stick insects, may have developed sophisticated camouflage to blend into the textured bark of the giant lycopods, essential for avoiding the gaze of early amphibians and reptiles beginning to explore terrestrial niches. The absence of birds, mammals, and even many modern insect groups meant a radically different food web, where these large arthropods occupied critical positions, transforming plant material and becoming prey for the emerging vertebrate predators. This epoch serves as a stark reminder of the planet's capacity for biological variation and adaptation under drastically different environmental conditions, pushing the boundaries of what we typically conceive of as insect size. The disappearance of these giants would later mark a significant shift in Earth's biological narrative. The Carboniferous period wasn't merely characterized by giant arthropods. It was defined by an explosion of plant life that fundamentally reshaped Earth's environment. Picture a global expanse dominated by dense, humid swamp forests that would dwarf any modern terrestrial ecosystem. This was the Carboniferous rainforest, a vast interconnected biome that began flourishing approximately 359 million years ago, leading directly to the dramatic oxygenation of the atmosphere and consequently the rise of giant insects. The primary architects of this verdant decay were not flowering plants, which had yet to evolve, but giant lycopods, enormous tree ferns, and towering horsetails. Genera like lepidodendron and sigillaria, colloquially known as scale trees for their distinctive bark patterns, could grow to heights exceeding 30 meters, their unbranching trunks terminating in a crown of leafy branches. These plants reproduced via spores, not seeds, and thrived in the warm, wet, and often waterlogged conditions prevalent across the supercontinent Pangaea. The sheer biomass generated by these fast-growing plant communities was immense. A critical factor in the accumulation of this organic matter was the absence of efficient decomposers. While bacteria and fungi existed, they had not yet fully evolved the robust enzymatic capabilities to break down the tough, woody lignin present in these new structural plants. Therefore, when these colossal trees fell, they did not rapidly decompose as they do today. Instead, they were slowly buried under layers of sediment and water in anaerobic conditions. This burial prevented their carbon from being released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Over millions of years, under immense pressure and heat, this buried organic material transformed into vast coal deposits, the very fossil fuels that powered the Industrial Revolution. This process, known as carbon sequestration, pulled vast quantities of CO2 out of the atmosphere. Simultaneously, plant photosynthesis released enormous amounts of oxygen. This imbalance in the carbon cycle, massive carbon burial and oxygen release, created the hyperoxic atmosphere that fueled the gigantic growth of arthropods, a direct consequence of the scent of verdant decay, lingering for millennia. Understanding this botanical revolution is key to comprehending the ecological canvas upon which the giant insects thrived. The sprawling Carboniferous forests, fueled by unchecked plant growth and leading to an oxygen-rich atmosphere, provided the stage for a truly remarkable spectacle: the terrestrial giant, Arthropleura. This colossal arthropod, related to modern millipedes and centipedes, dominates the fossil record as the largest known invertebrate to ever walk the Earth. Its sheer size would have been an intimidating sight, a testament to the evolutionary possibilities enabled by extreme environmental conditions. Fossil discoveries, particularly trace fossils like trackways found in Scotland, Nova Scotia, and the United States, provide invaluable data on Arthropleura's morphology and locomotion. These fossil tracks, known as diplycnites, reveal a creature moving across damp forest floors, leaving behind parallel rows of impressions from its numerous legs. Based on the width of these trackways and the dimensions of articulated body segments, paleontologists estimate Arthropleura could reach lengths of up to 2.6 meters, 8.5 feet, and weigh over 50 kilograms, 110 pounds. This dwarfs any living terrestrial arthropod, making even the large Goliath beetles seem minuscule in comparison. Research led by scientists like Dr. Neil Davies from Cambridge University, who meticulously analysed newly discovered Arthropleura trackways, continues to refine our understanding of its habits. While its exact diet remains a subject of ongoing debate, some speculate it was herbivorous, feeding on decayed plant matter and spores, while others suggest it might have been an opportunistic predator or scavenger. The general consensus leans towards a detritivorous lifestyle. Its robust exoskeleton and numerous limbs would have been perfectly adapted for moving through the dense undergrowth of the Carboniferous swamps, breaking down the vast quantities of fallen plant material. The sheer mass and power required for such a creature to navigate its environment underscore the extraordinary conditions of its era. Imagine the subtle tremor of the ground, the rustle in the ancient canopy, as this multi-legged behemoth scuttled through the primordial forest. Arthropleura. Its existence is a powerful affirmation of how ecological niches, atmospheric chemistry, and geological processes can conspire to produce truly alien forms of life, pushing the boundaries of biological design far beyond what we observe in the modern world. While the Carboniferous period witnessed the emergence of colossal millipedes and dragonflies, the hyperoxic environment also fostered the growth of another formidable group, the arachnids. Imagine a forest floor dappled with sunlight, glinting off dew-kissed spider silk, and the sudden glint of emerald eyes, perhaps the size of a modern thumb, observing the ancient world. This was the realm of giant Carboniferous spiders and their relatives, occupying vital predatory niches within this unique ecosystem. Fossil evidence of ancient arachnids, though rarer and often less complete than that of winged insects or large myriapods, due to their delicate exoskeletons, confirms their considerable size. Notable discoveries from locations such as Monceau-les-Mines in France and Mazon Creek in Illinois reveal creatures far grander than their modern counterparts. For instance, the extinct genus Megarachne, initially mistaken for a giant spider, but later reclassified as a eurypterid, sea scorpion, still represents an animal of impressive scale, with a body length of over 50 centimeters, 20 inches. While true Carboniferous spiders did not reach such gargantuan proportions, species like Brachygnatha and Paleocorinus show body lengths indicative of creatures several times larger than an average modern tarantula. The elevated atmospheric oxygen levels provided the same respiratory advantages for these predatory arthropods as they did for the detritivorous and herbivores. Spiders, like insects, rely on a passive respiratory system. Larger bodies require more oxygen, and the oxygen-rich atmosphere of the Carboniferous would have allowed more efficient diffusion and uptake. This enabled the development of larger bodies and potentially more active predatory lifestyles. These large arachnids would have been apex predators for the smaller terrestrial arthropods and early tetrapods. Their formidable chelicerae and often robust exoskeletons were well suited for capturing and subduing prey in the dense undergrowth. The presence of these substantial arachnids underscores the complete recalibration of ecological scales in the Carboniferous. The food web was structured around giants, from the scuttling Arthropleura to the airborne Meganeura and the lurking, multi-eyed predators in between, all thriving in an environment alien to our modern understanding. Their survival strategies, perfected through millions of years, contributed to the diverse tapestry of life that paved the way for future evolutionary developments. The skies of the Carboniferous and early Permian periods were a domain unlike any we know today. Absent were the feathered dinosaurs and later birds that would dominate aerial ecosystems for millions of years. Instead, the air was filled with the rhythmic beat of membranous wings, belonging to an array of incredible arthropods. This was a world without feathers, where even the largest aerial predators were insects, providing a fascinating glimpse into an evolutionary pathway that diverged dramatically from our current experience. The most iconic of these aerial giants was undoubtedly Meganeura monyi, a member of the extinct order Meganisoptera, often referred to as griffin flies, due to their impressive size and predatory nature. With wingspans approaching 75 centimeters, 30 inches, making them comparable to today's largest birds, Meganeura would have been an apex aerial predator. Fossil evidence from Commentary, France, among other sites, showcases the delicate yet strong venation of their wings, perfectly adapted for powered flight. These giant arthropods played a critical ecological role. As aerial predators, they would have patrolled the swamp forests, preying on smaller insects and potentially even early amphibians that ventured too far from the safety of the water. Their large, multifaceted eyes, characteristic of modern dragonflies, would have provided exceptional vision for hunting. The absence of avian competitors meant that these griffin flies faced little challenge in maintaining their dominance of the skies. The ability to achieve such flight within an arthropod body plan is intrinsically linked to the elevated oxygen levels of the time. Flight is a metabolically demanding activity, requiring a significant and rapid supply of oxygen to muscle tissues. The hyperoxic atmosphere of the Carboniferous would have facilitated this high metabolic rate, allowing the evolution and sustained activity of such enormous flying insects. The subsequent decline in atmospheric oxygen, as geological changes shifted the global carbon cycle, would play a significant role in limiting arthropod size, particularly for flying species. Thus, Meganeura and its relatives stand as spectacular reminders of a time when the laws of nature, subtly altered by planetary conditions, allowed for the reign of airborne giants that would never again be seen. Beyond the formidable Meganeura, the Carboniferous and early Permian skies teemed with an astonishing diversity of winged insects, many displaying morphologies vastly different from their modern descendants, yet all beneficiaries of the oxygen-rich atmosphere. Imagine the constant low hum that might have filled the ancient forests, a symphony produced by the beating of thousands of large, chitinous wings navigating the dense canopy. This acoustic backdrop was an integral part of life in Earth's hyperoxic past. One of the most significant groups emerging during this period were the Paleodictyopteroids. This extinct order represented some of the earliest winged insects, characterized by distinctive mouthparts adapted for piercing and sucking, likely feeding on plant sap. Their most striking feature, however, was often the presence of a second, smaller pair of wing-like structures, or paranota, on the prothorax, in addition to their two main pairs of wings. Some species, such as Stenodictia lobata, could have wingspans exceeding 30 centimeters, 12 inches. Their delicate fossil impressions, often found in finely grained sedimentary rocks, offer crucial insights into the evolution of insect flight and wing venation patterns. Another prominent group was the Blatoptera, the ancient ancestors of cockroaches. While we explored their terrestrial forms earlier, many early Blatoptera were also capable aviators, some reaching considerable sizes. These generalist feeders, both on land and in the air, demonstrate insects' remarkable adaptability. Their continued success through geological time, surviving multiple mass extinctions, speaks to their robust evolutionary strategy. The sheer abundance and size of these flying forms indicate a robust and complex aerial ecosystem, predating birds by over 150 million years. These early insects occupied a vast array of niches, from high-flying predators like Meganeura to sap-sucking Paleodictyopteroids and omnivorous Blatopterans. The evolutionary innovations in flight mechanics, wing structure, and respiratory systems during this period laid the groundwork for the incredible diversity of winged insects we see today. The study of their fossil record highlights a crucial chapter in biological history, where the fundamental principles of aerial locomotion took shape, driven by a planetary atmosphere profoundly different from our own. The grand scale of Carboniferous arthropods extended beyond mere size. It dictated a unique interplay of predator and prey, a delicate balance where survival often hinged on a hunter's patience and a prey's desperation. In a world where the largest flying creatures were insects and terrestrial behemoths scuttled through the undergrowth, the strategies for survival were profoundly different from those observed in modern ecosystems. Consider the hunting strategies of the dominant aerial predators like Meganeura. Their massive compound eyes, similar to those of modern dragonflies, provided a nearly 360-degree field of vision, crucial for spotting prey against the complex backdrop of the Carboniferous forests. These swift flyers were likely opportunistic hunters, snatching smaller insects mid-flight with their spiny legs, or plucking them from vegetation. Simulations based on modern dragonfly flight dynamics and fossil wing structure suggest remarkable maneuverability, essential for navigating dense environments and pursuing agile prey. The energy expenditure for such large animals to maintain flight would have been immense, necessitating efficient hunting to sustain themselves. On the ground, predators like the larger arachnids explored previously employed different tactics. Spiders, even the Carboniferous giants, would have relied on ambush predation, waiting motionless on tree trunks or amidst foliage for unsuspecting victims. The evolution of silk, even in its earliest forms, would have provided a crucial advantage, creating tripwires or rudimentary webs, ensnaring smaller insects. The prey, in turn, developed its own defenses, the armored exoskeletons of many smaller insects, or the sheer speed and agility of others, were vital countermeasures against these formidable predators. This predatory pressure was a powerful evolutionary driver. The constant threat from immense aerial and terrestrial arthropod predators undoubtedly shaped the development of camouflage, defensive behaviors, and even the eventual diversification of insect forms, while the emergence of terrestrial vertebrates as predators would later reshape this dynamic. In the Carboniferous, the hunt was a purely arthropod affair, a continuous ancient struggle for survival echoing through the primordial forests. The lessons learned in this era of giants laid critical groundwork for the complex ecological relationships that define life on Earth today. The Carboniferous period, alongside its awe-inspiring arthropods, also marked a pivotal chapter in vertebrate evolution, the emergence of amphibians and early reptiles. Their presence adds another layer of complexity to the ancient ecosystem, particularly on the slick, silent forest floor beneath the towering lycopods and ferns. This was a world still largely dominated by invertebrates, yet a new kind of life was beginning to stake its claim. Early amphibians, the first vertebrates to truly adapt to terrestrial life, were still heavily tied to water for reproduction, but their adult forms explored the rich swamp environments. Genera such as Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, while still possessing fish-like tails and gills in their larval stages, had evolved limbs for locomotion on land. Fossilized trackways discovered in Nova Scotia and Greenland provide evidence of their sprawling gait, indicating a slow, deliberate movement across the damp substrate. These creatures, though small by later reptilian standards, could reach lengths of 1 meter or more, making them significant predators of smaller arthropods and fish in their respective niches. The crucial development, however, was the evolution of the amniotic egg, which defines the reptiles. This evolutionary innovation, allowing reproduction away from water, liberated vertebrates from their ancestral aquatic dependence. The earliest reptiles, known as proto-reptiles, or stem amniotes, began to diversify towards the late Carboniferous. One famous example is Hylonomus lieli, whose perfectly preserved skeleton was found within the fossilized stumps of Lepidodendron trees in the Joggins fossil cliffs in Nova Scotia. At only about 20 centimeters long, Hylonomus was a small, lizard-like creature, likely preying on insects and other small arthropods. Their presence dramatically changed the dynamics of the forest floor. While Arthropleura was colossal and large spiders were formidable, the emergence of vertebrates with internal skeletons and more advanced nervous systems introduced a new dimension to the food web. The slick, silent forest floor, once solely the domain of scuttling arthropods, began to echo with the cautious, deliberate movements of these new inhabitants, ancestors to all modern reptiles, birds, and mammals. They represented a nascent but growing challenge to the arthropod's reign, hinting at a future where vertebrates would eventually dominate the terrestrial landscape. The dense, often dark undergrowth of the Carboniferous forests, coupled with perpetually overcast skies, created an environment where light could be a rare and valuable commodity. In this dim, humid world, a truly mesmerizing phenomenon may have emerged, the glimmer of bioluminescent life. While direct fossil evidence is inherently challenging to find, scientific extrapolation and a deep understanding of ecological pressures suggest that some of the earliest forms of bioluminescence could have been present among Carboniferous insects. Bioluminescence, the production of light by living organisms, is predominantly observed in marine environments today, but terrestrial bioluminescence is also widespread globally. Fireflies, glowworms, and certain fungi are prime examples. The chemical reactions that produce light, primarily involving luciferin, luciferase, and oxygen, are ancient. Molecular clock analyses of bioluminescent lineages indicate that the capability arose independently multiple times across various taxa, with some estimates tracing the origins of certain pathways back hundreds of millions of years. In the Carboniferous, particularly among the vast diversity of flying and terrestrial insects, the advantages of light production would have been myriad. In the low light conditions beneath the dense canopy, bioluminescence could serve as a means of communication, attracting mates, warning predators or rivals, or even luring prey. For a large, slow-moving creature like Arthropleura, faint luminous patterns on its robust exoskeleton could have deterred potential threats. For smaller, flying insects, brief flashes might have been crucial signals in a world without complex auditory communication or vibrant floral displays. While no glowing insect fossils exist, the ecological niche strongly supports the hypothesis. Imagine swarms of flying insects, their bodies pulsing with soft light, navigating the gloom. Picture glowing fungal growths illuminating the forest floor, attracting detritivores. This internal light source would have added another layer of ethereal beauty and complex interaction to the ancient ecosystem. The silent, slick forest floor may not have been entirely dark. Instead, it could have been subtly illuminated by intermittent, pulsing glimmers, a primal light show orchestrated by creatures striving for survival and propagation in a truly alien epoch. The potential for such wonders further highlights the extraordinary depth of biodiversity in Earth's deep past. While fossil impressions in sedimentary rock offer crucial insights into the morphology of Carboniferous insects, another, far more intimate window into their ancient lives exists. Amber, though less prevalent from the Paleozoic era than from later periods, rare discoveries of Paleozoic amber provide exquisite, three-dimensional preservation, trapping these epochal creatures in a golden, transparent prison, capturing their delicate structures and even minute details lost in rock fossils. Amber, fossilized tree resin, acts as a natural time capsule. When certain trees produce resin as a defense mechanism against insects or fungal infections, flying or crawling creatures can become entrapped in the sticky substance. Over millions of years, under specific geological conditions, this resin polymerizes and hardens into amber. The process requires specific trees to produce large quantities of resin, and the environmental conditions must be just right for rapid burial and fossilization, making exceptionally ancient amber incredibly rare. One of the most significant finds comes from the late Carboniferous, approximately 300 million years ago, in the form of Carboniferous amber, or resinites, discovered in coal seams of France and the United Kingdom. Although these specimens are often opaque and brittle compared to Cenozoic amber, advanced microscopy and spectroscopic analysis can still reveal remarkable details. These rare inclusions have yielded tiny mites, springtails, and fragments of other minute arthropods, creatures that would otherwise be unlikely to fossilize. These discoveries are invaluable, providing direct evidence of arthropod diversity and even paleo-environmental data, such as records of ancient fungal infections and plant pathogens preserved alongside the insects. The significance of these amber inclusions extends beyond mere curiosity. They offer direct, undeniable proof of the delicate anatomical features such as antennae, compound eyes, and leg segments, that are often distorted or absent in compression fossils. This level of detail allows paleoentomologists to more accurately reconstruct phylogenetic relationships and ecological roles. The weight of an amber prison, therefore, is not a burden to these ancient insects, but a gift to science, silently preserving the secrets of a primordial world for millions of years, an unparalleled testament to the delicate tapestry of life that once thrived in the giant carboniferous forests. The story of giant insects, and indeed the entire carboniferous ecosystem, is one dictated by geology and atmospheric chemistry, specifically the rise and fall of oxygen levels. As we have seen, the hyperoxic environment, peaking at an estimated 35% oxygen concentration, was the primary catalyst for arthropod gigantism. However, time's unyielding embrace would inevitably bring change, drastically altering the conditions that fostered these behemoths. Around 300 million years ago, a series of profound geological and climatic shifts began to unfold. Pangaea, the supercontinent, was continuing to assemble, leading to widespread mountain-building events and changes in global ocean currents. These tectonic forces drastically altered weather patterns, leading to a global cooling trend and increasing aridity in many regions. The vast, humid carboniferous rainforests, the coal swamps, began to fragment and recede. This significant loss of plant biomass had a cascading effect on atmospheric oxygen levels. With fewer plants actively photosynthesizing and burying carbon, the rate of oxygen production plummeted. Simultaneously, as land masses became drier and the extensive swamps diminished, the massive burial of organic matter that had previously locked away carbon and released oxygen slowed considerably. This led to a gradual but significant decline in atmospheric oxygen from its carboniferous peak. Scientists estimate oxygen levels dropped from around 35% down to near modern levels, or even lower, by the end of the Permian. This reduction in available oxygen profoundly impacted the physiology of giant insects. As previously discussed, their unique tracheal respiratory system functions less efficiently in lower oxygen concentrations. A larger body requires more oxygen, and with less oxygen in the air, maintaining such colossal sizes became metabolically unsustainable. Smaller body sizes became an evolutionary advantage, as they required less oxygen and could disperse it more effectively throughout their tissues. Moreover, the changing climate also favored the diversification of vertebrates. As the wetlands dried, new ecological niches opened up for reptiles with their amniotic eggs, which were no longer reliant on water for reproduction. This period saw the rise of more efficient and larger terrestrial predators, placing additional selective pressure on the already struggling giant arthropods. Time's unyielding embrace, marked by shifting continents and changing atmospheric composition, thus wrote the final chapter for the age of giant insects, paving the way for new forms of life to dominate the planet. The central thesis explaining the colossal size of carboniferous arthropods hinges on a fundamental element: oxygen. It was the caress of ancient, hyperoxic air, profoundly different from our modern atmosphere, that allowed organisms like Meganeura and Arthropleura to achieve dimensions that seem impossible by today's standards. Understanding this atmospheric anomaly is key to unlocking the mysteries of this prehistoric world. During the Carboniferous period, roughly 359 to 299 million years ago, global oxygen levels reached an unprecedented peak, estimated by some models to be as high as 35% of the atmosphere, compared to the current 21%. This dramatic increase was a direct consequence of the widespread, rapidly growing swamp forests. These colossal plants, including lycopods and horsetails, efficiently converted atmospheric carbon dioxide into organic matter through photosynthesis, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Crucially, the lack of efficient decomposers, particularly fungi and bacteria capable of breaking down lignin, meant that vast quantities of this organic matter were buried and sequestered as coal, rather than decaying and releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. This massive burial perpetuated a long-term unbalance in the carbon cycle, leading to the sustained hyperoxic conditions. For arthropods, this oxygen-rich environment was a game-changer. Insects and their relatives do not possess lungs. Instead, they respire through a system of tracheal tubes that branch throughout their bodies. Oxygen diffuses directly from the atmosphere into these tubes and then into the tissues. The efficiency of this diffusion process is directly proportional to the concentration of oxygen in the surrounding air. In a 35% oxygen atmosphere, diffusion would have been significantly more effective, allowing for larger body plans without the physiological limitations imposed by a less efficient respiratory system. Researchers like Dr. Robert Dudley at the University of California, Berkeley, have conducted extensive studies on the relationship between atmospheric oxygen and insect size. Their work, utilizing computational models and comparative physiology, strongly supports the oxygen limitation hypothesis. Essentially, the larger an insect, the greater the challenge to supply oxygen to its inner cells far from the tracheal openings. High atmospheric oxygen alleviated this limitation, allowing tracheal systems to grow larger and deliver sufficient oxygen to massive bodies. Thus, the very air these creatures breathed was the invisible force enabling their gigantism, a silent, life-giving caress from an ancient atmosphere. While the Carboniferous forest was dominated visually by towering plants and gigantic arthropods, another sensory dimension would have been equally profound: sound. In a world devoid of singing birds or roaring mammals, the ancient atmosphere would have carried a different kind of symphony, a complex soundscape produced by the movements and communications of countless insects. This was likely a symphony of stridulation, rubbing body parts together to create distinct acoustic signals, a fundamental aspect of insect communication then as now. Although direct auditory evidence from 300 million years ago is, by definition, impossible to recover, paleontological data combined with analyses of modern insect morphology provide compelling inferences. Many Carboniferous insects, particularly the ancient relatives of cockroaches, Blatoptera, and grasshoppers, Orthoptera precursors, possessed the anatomical structures necessary for stridulation. Fossilized forewings and legs exhibiting specialized ridges, spines, or scraper-like structures suggest that sound production was already an established means of communication. Consider the dense, often low-light conditions prevalent beneath the Carboniferous canopy. In such an environment, visual signals, while important, might have been limited in range. Chemical signals, or pheromones, operate on slow timescales. Acoustic communication, however, offers immediate, directional signaling over potentially longer distances, proving advantageous for purposes such as mate attraction, territorial defense, or predator warning. The sheer size of many Carboniferous insects would have allowed for larger stridulatory organs, potentially producing louder and lower frequency sounds that could travel effectively through the humid air and dense vegetation. The ecological implications of such an ancient soundscape are significant. A complex symphony of stridulation indicates intricate social interactions, competition, and perhaps even rudimentary ecological territories among these arthropods. It paints a picture of a bustling, vibrant ecosystem, alive with constant, unseen communication. The sounds of breaking twigs from a scuttling arthropleura would have been underscored by the rhythmic clicks, chirps, and buzzes of smaller insects, creating an acoustic tapestry utterly alien, yet intrinsically familiar to anyone who has spent time in a modern forest. This ancient symphony reveals that while their forms were gigantic, the fundamental needs and methods of communication for these creatures were not so different from their much smaller descendants today. The Carboniferous period wasn't only defined by the life it fostered, but also by the extraordinary processes of fossilization that preserved its legacy. Imagine the taste of mineral earth, slowly permeating organic remains, replacing delicate tissues with stone, locking moments in time with remarkable fidelity. This geological alchemy has allowed us to peer millions of years into the past, revealing the intricate details of a world long gone. The most common form of fossilization in the Carboniferous was permineralization, particularly prevalent in the fossilization of the period's dominant plants. When wood or other organic material was buried in sediment rich in mineral-laden water, minerals like silica, calcite, or pyrite would infiltrate the porous spaces within the remains. Over vast spans of time, these minerals would crystallize, forming internal casts of the original structures, preserving the cell-level detail of ancient trees like lepidodendron and sigillaria. These petrified forests provide invaluable insights into plant anatomy and growth patterns of the period. For the giant insects and arachnids we've discussed, compression fossils are the most abundant and informative. When an organism is flattened by layers of sediment and rock, its organic material degrades, leaving behind a thin film of carbonaceous residue that retains the shape and often intricate details of the creature. Exceptionally preserved compression fossils, such as those from the Mason Creek Lagerstätte in Illinois, exhibit soft tissue outlines, muscle scars, and even details of wing venation, an astounding level of preservation for millions of years. The unique conditions at Mason Creek, involving rapid burial in low-oxygen marine muds and subsequent formation of ironstone concretions around the delicate remains, created a perfect environment for preserving both marine and terrestrial organisms, including numerous insects. These fossils aren't just pretty pictures, they are scientific data points. Analyzing their chemical composition, structural integrity, and spatial relationships provides critical information for paleoentomologists and paleobotanists. They fuel hypotheses about diet through fossilized gut contents or mouthpart morphology, reveal intricate ecological relationships between plants and insects through feeding traces, and chronicle the evolutionary changes in body plan over geological timescales. The taste of mineral earth, therefore, is the taste of ancient history, precisely preserved and waiting to be deciphered, a testament to time's slow, powerful embrace. While the narrative of the Carboniferous often centers on the lush, humid coal swamps, it's crucial to remember that Earth's dynamic geology was creating diverse landscapes, including far less hospitable environments. Yet, even in these unforgiving lands, life found a way to persist and evolve, demonstrating a tenacity that underscores the very essence of biological survival. As the supercontinent Pangaea continued its assembly, vast mountain ranges rose, creating rain shadows and vast continental interiors that became increasingly arid. These drier regions, particularly during the late Carboniferous and early Permian, starkly contrasted the verdant swamps. While we associate the period with abundant moisture, paleoclimatic models and geological evidence, such as evaporite deposits and Aeolian sandstones, confirm the existence of extensive deserts and semi-arid zones. In these challenging conditions, the predominant flora shifted from the moisture-loving lycopods and ferns to drought-resistant conifers and seed ferns, ancestors to more modern plant groups. These plants, with their innovative reproductive strategies, seeds encased in resilient coatings, and more robust vascular systems, could colonize and thrive in drier, less stable environments. This botanical revolution, while slower than the oxygen-driven changes, was a significant evolutionary step. For arthropods, life in these unforgiving lands presented a unique set of adaptive pressures. Size, a distinct advantage in the oxygen-rich, predator-scarce swamps, became a liability in arid ecosystems where heat stress and water retention were primary concerns. Smaller, more compact body plans that could burrow, seek shade, or conserve moisture would have been favored, while giant insects likely remained confined to the shrinking pockets of moist swamp forests. Smaller, hardier species of beetles, scorpions, and early arachnids would have increasingly diversified in these drier niches. Fossil finds from these transitional environments, though rarer, show adaptations like thicker cuticles and specialized appendages for desert life. This diversification in harsher environments highlights life's incredible ability to adapt and survive, even as global conditions shifted dramatically, laying the groundwork for the more resilient forms of life that would populate the post-Carboniferous world. The narrative of Earth's deep past is primarily pieced together from the cold, hard stone of fossil records. These fragments, etched into rock over unimaginable spans of time, represent our only tangible link to the giant insects and the Carboniferous world they inhabited. Without the rigorous study and interpretation of these geological documents, our understanding of this extraordinary era would remain mere speculation. Paleontology, the scientific study of ancient life, relies on meticulous fieldwork and advanced laboratory analysis to extract information from these fossilized remains. Geological surveys, often focused on sedimentary rock formations of Carboniferous and Permian ages, such as shale, sandstone, and especially coal seams, are critical for discovering new fossil sites. Locations like Maison Creek in Illinois, USA, or Commentry in France are renowned Lagerstätten, sites with exceptional fossil preservation, often capturing delicate soft tissues and complete articulated skeletons of insects, plants, and other organisms. The unique geochemical conditions at these sites, such as rapid burial in anoxic sediments, prevented decay and allowed for the exquisite detail we observe. Once discovered, fossils undergo a rigorous process of excavation, preparation, and analysis. Delicate tools, from dental picks to air scribes, are used by trained paleontologists and preparators to carefully remove the surrounding matrix without damaging the fossil itself. Advanced imaging techniques, such as micro-CT scanning, allow researchers to see internal structures and reconstruct three-dimensional models of creatures long extinct, even when encased in opaque rock. This technology has revolutionized our ability to study ancient anatomy and understand biomechanics, for instance, of extinct giant dragonfly wings. Beyond morphology, geochemical analysis of fossilized plant matter and ancient air bubbles trapped in amber and ice cores from later periods provides crucial data on paleoclimates and atmospheric composition. Isotopic ratios of carbon and oxygen act as proxies for ancient temperatures and atmospheric oxygen levels, directly supporting the oxygen limitation hypothesis for insect gigantism. Each fossil, from a tiny mite in a piece of resonite to the impression of a metre-long Arthropleura trackway, is not just a relic, but a piece of a vast, complex puzzle. The cold, hard stone of time thus yields warm, compelling narratives, allowing modern science to illuminate the lives of creatures that vanished from the earth millions of years before humanity's dawn. Among the most evocative and direct connections to prehistoric life are trace fossils, the footprints, tracks, and burrows left behind by ancient organisms. For the giant insects and myriapods of the Carboniferous, these footprints of forgotten giants provide unparalleled insights into their locomotion, behavior, and the environments they inhabited, often offering details that body fossils cannot. The colossal millipede-like creature, Arthropleura, provides the most compelling examples of such trace fossils. Its distinctive trackways, known scientifically as diplycnites, have been discovered in numerous locations across North America, Europe, and Scotland. These tracks typically consist of parallel rows of small circular or oval depressions, sometimes preserving the imprints of hundreds of individual legs as the creature ambled across damp substrates. The sheer width of these trackways, some exceeding 50 centimeters, immediately conveys the immense scale of the animal that produced them. Analysis of these diplycnites reveals crucial behavioral data. The consistent spacing and pattern of the foot impressions suggest a relatively slow, deliberate gait, optimizing stability in a multi-legged organism. The presence of these tracks, often in ancient riverbeds or along the margins of Carboniferous lakes and swamps, confirms that Arthropleura was a terrestrial creature adapted to humid environments. In some rare instances, where trackways intersect with ripple marks or desiccated mud cracks, paleontologists can reconstruct precise paleo-environmental conditions, painting a vivid picture of the ancient landscape. Other trace fossils also offer glimpses into the behavior of Carboniferous arthropods. Coprolites, or fossilized feces, from large insects contain identifiable plant spores and fragments, confirming herbivorous or detritivorous diets. Fossilized burrows, though less definitively attributed to specific insect species, indicate subterranean activity and ecological engineers shaping the soil. The bite marks and gnawings on fossilized plants, while not precisely footprints, are also a form of trace fossil, recording the feeding strategies of ancient herbivorous insects. Each scratch, each indentation, each pattern on the stone surface contributes to a dynamic and behavioral understanding of these ancient inhabitants. These are more than mere impressions. They are frozen moments in time, providing direct evidence of the lives and movements of the forgotten giants that once roamed our planet, leaving their indelible mark on the cold, hard stone of time. The Earth's crust is never truly static. Beneath the seemingly tranquil surface, tectonic plates grind and shift, driven by the planet's internal heat. During the late Carboniferous and early Permian, this geological dynamism, often expressed as the pulse of a volcanic heart, played a critical, if indirect, role in the rise and eventual decline of giant insects. As the supercontinent Pangaea continued its assembly, vast mountain-building events were a dominant feature of the global landscape. The collision of land masses, such as Laurentia, Proto-North America, with Gondwana, Proto-South America, Africa, created the Appalachian Mountains in North America and the Hercynian or Variscan mountain belts across Europe. These massive orogenic events significantly altered continental drainage patterns and global climate. The uplift of vast land masses led to increased weathering of silicate rocks, a process that removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, contributing to global cooling. More directly, volcanic activity, a common accompaniment to plate tectonics, would have periodically punctuated the ancient world, while short-term, explosive volcanic eruptions inject aerosols into the atmosphere, leading to cooling, sustained periods of volcanism, particularly large igneous province (LIP) events, release vast quantities of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. These gases can have a profound impact on atmospheric chemistry and global temperatures. For instance, the Siberian Traps eruptions, occurring at the Permian-Triassic boundary, are considered a primary driver of the largest mass extinction event in Earth's history. Although the massive eruptive events responsible for the end Permian extinction came later, smaller, localized volcanic episodes throughout the Carboniferous would have contributed to the overall atmospheric composition. These volcanic outgassings could have intermittently increased atmospheric CO2, influencing the growth rate of the dense Carboniferous forests, which in turn affected oxygen levels. The interplay between tectonic uplift, continental configurations, and volcanic activity created a complex feedback loop that modulated Earth's climate and atmosphere over millions of years. This volatile geological backdrop, with its fluctuating pulse of a volcanic heart, was an often unseen but powerful shaper of the conditions that first favored and then ultimately challenged the reign of giant insects, demonstrating the intimate connection between deep Earth processes and the evolution of life on the surface. The conclusion of the Carboniferous period, leading into the Permian, was marked by significant environmental upheaval, culminating in the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. This event, driven by a combination of tectonics, volcanism, and global climatic shifts, represented a turning point for the giant insects, demanding ash and resilience from a planet slowly being reborn. As the supercontinent Pangaea continued to form, vast mountain ranges rose, fundamentally altering atmospheric and oceanic circulation patterns. The global climate began a prolonged drying and cooling trend. The extensive lowland coal swamps, which had fueled the oxygenation of the atmosphere and the gigantism of arthropods, started to fragment. Paleobotanical evidence shows a dramatic decline in the dominant lycopod forests, replaced by more fire-resistant and drought-tolerant conifers and seed ferns. This shift in vegetation directly impacted the atmospheric oxygen balance. Less widespread burial of organic carbon meant a reduction in oxygen production, causing atmospheric O2 levels to begin their decline from the Carboniferous peak. This environmental stress was not singular. Volcanic activity continued to play a role. While the colossal Permian-Triassic extinction event was still in the future, smaller yet significant, volcanic eruptions during the late Carboniferous and early Permian would have periodically injected ash and gases into the atmosphere. These events would have caused temporary cooling and acid rain, further stressing ecosystems. The ash from these eruptions would have coated vegetation, reducing photosynthesis and potentially suffocating smaller organisms. However, life, as always, found ways to adapt. The decline in atmospheric oxygen, coupled with the fragmentation of their preferred habitats and the emergence of more diverse vertebrate predators, gradually limited the maximum size insects could attain. The ecological vacuum created by the collapse of the Carboniferous wetlands also spurred further diversification among surviving insect lineages and the burgeoning reptiles. Tiny, compact beetles, for example, proved remarkably resilient, adapting to the drier conditions and exploiting new food sources. This period of intense environmental pressure acted as a powerful selective filter, favoring smaller, more metabolically efficient, and environmentally tolerant species. The giant insects, once the unchallenged rulers of the air and forest floor, faded into the fossil record. This transformation, driven by ash and resilience, did not signal an end to insect life, but rather a profound rebirth, setting the stage for the insect diversity that would populate the planet for hundreds of millions of years to come, albeit in forms far more familiar to us today. The iconic shimmering exoskeleton, a hallmark of arthropods, was more than just external armor for the giant insects of the Carboniferous. It was a marvel of biological engineering. This durable, lightweight, yet rigid casing provided protection, muscle attachment points, and, critically, support for their immense bodies against the pull of gravity and the forces of their environment. The properties and limitations of this structure profoundly influence their evolutionary trajectory and their ultimate size. Formed primarily from chitin, a tough polysaccharide, reinforced with proteins in a complex matrix, the exoskeleton of Carboniferous arthropods allowed for immense growth. For terrestrial giants like Arthropleura, its segmented design provided both flexibility for movement and structural integrity. Each segment's growth meant a new layer of chitin, meticulously built upon the last during molting. This process, known as ecdysis, is one of the most vulnerable periods in an arthropod's life cycle. During molting, the old exoskeleton is shed, and a new, larger one expands and hardens, leaving the creature temporarily soft and defenseless. For an Arthropleura spanning over 2 meters, this would have been a prolonged and perilous event, demanding safe, secluded locations and significant energy expenditure. For the flying giants, like Meganeura, the exoskeleton played a different but equally crucial role. The intricate network of veins supporting their vast wings was an extension of this same chitinous material, providing a framework that was both strong enough to withstand aerodynamic forces and light enough to allow for powered flight. Research into insect wing biomechanics demonstrates the delicate balance between rigidity and flexibility required for efficient flight. The high oxygen levels improved metabolic efficiency, enabling the energetic demands of developing and maintaining such large, complex exoskeletal structures and the muscular power to operate them. The fundamental limitations of the exoskeleton, however, eventually contributed to the size ceiling for arthropods. Unlike vertebrates, whose internal skeletons allow for continuous growth, arthropods must molt to grow. The larger the organism, the more difficult and risky molting becomes, and the longer the hardening process. Combined with the decreasing oxygen levels and the increasing presence of more efficient vertebrate predators in the late Carboniferous and Permian, the inherent constraints of the exoskeleton ultimately contributed to the evolutionary pressure favoring smaller, more agile body plans that are characteristic of modern insects. The shimmering exoskeleton, once enabling gigantism, became a factor in its decline, showcasing how fundamental biological structures define the boundaries of life's possibilities. In any ecosystem, survival often hinges on the ability to remain unseen, to blend seamlessly into the environment. Even among the colossal arthropods of the Carboniferous, the art of camouflage was undoubtedly a critical evolutionary strategy, honed over millions of years of predator-prey dynamics in a world dominated by dense vegetation and the looming threat of the newly emerging vertebrates. While the exceptionally large-bodied arthropods like Arthropleura might have relied more on their sheer size or armored exoskeletons for defense, even they would have benefited from cryptic coloration to avoid detection by the earliest terrestrial vertebrates. Imagine a mottled brown and green pattern on Arthropleura Tuera's segments, allowing it to disappear amongst the decaying leaf litter and the textured bark of fallen lycopods. For smaller, more vulnerable insects and arachnids, camouflage would have been a primary defense mechanism. Fossil evidence, though rarely preserving color directly, can provide strong inferences about ancient camouflage. The morphology of certain carboniferous insects, particularly the early ancestors of stick insects and katydids, shows distinct body forms adapted for mimicry. For instance, some primitive stick insects from the Permian period exhibit elongated twig-like bodies, strongly suggesting they blended with the branches of ancient plants. Similarly, the flattened leaf-like bodies of some early orthopterans would have helped them disappear amidst dense foliage. The intricate venation patterns on the wings of some blatopterans might have broken up their outlines against the dappled light filtering through the canopy, functioning as disruptive coloration. The emergence of increasingly sophisticated visual predators, including amphibians and early reptiles equipped with more acute vision than many of their invertebrate counterparts, would have intensified the selective pressure for effective camouflage. A creature's ability to blend into its background, whether a mottled swamp floor or a leafy branch, directly impacted its survival. This constant evolutionary arms race between predator and prey drove the diversification of forms and patterns, shaping the appearance of countless species over geological time. The art of camouflage, while silent and often invisible, played a vital role in the intricate balance of life and death in a prehistoric world where every advantage could mean the difference between survival and oblivion. The foundation of any thriving ecosystem is its primary producers, the plants. In the Carboniferous, these were not the flowering plants and grasses familiar today, but a magnificent and diverse array of spore-bearing flora that formed the very fabric of the landscape. And upon this verdant canvas, countless herbivorous insects left their indelible mark, consuming, shaping, and influencing the evolution of these ancient forests, producing the crunch of ancient flora that echoed through the swamps. The dominant plant life consisted of towering lycopods, lepidodendron, sigillaria, giant horsetails, calamites, and numerous varieties of tree ferns. These plants reproduced via spores, colonizing vast, perpetually damp areas. Their tough, fibrous structures, rich in lignin, presented unique digestibility challenges for herbivores. While Arthropleura was a detritivore, feasting on decaying matter, countless other smaller insects specialized in consuming living plant material. Fossil evidence for herbivory, the consumption of plants by animals from the Carboniferous, is extensive and multifaceted. Paleobotanists and paleoentomologists study fossilized leaves, stems, and wood for signs of insect damage. These include telltale feeding traces, distinct bite marks, leaf mines, tunnels within leaves, galls, abnormal plant growths induced by insects, and even borings in wood. Studies have shown a significant increase in the diversity and intensity of insect herbivory during the Carboniferous, mirroring the rise of plant complexity. For example, evidence of external feeding on leaves, often in characteristic patterns related to specific insect mouthparts, is common. The crunch of ancient flora would have been a pervasive sound in these forests, a continuous process of energy transfer from plants to insects. This herbivory was not a passive interaction. It drove co-evolution. Plants developed chemical defenses, toxins, resins, and structural modifications like tougher cell walls to deter hungry insects. Insects, in turn, evolved detoxification mechanisms, specialized mouthparts, and digestive enzymes to overcome these defenses. For example, the early paleodictyopteroids, with their piercing, sucking mouthparts, were adept at extracting sap, bypassing tougher plant tissues. This dynamic arms race between ancient flora and their insect consumers profoundly influenced the biodiversity and ecological structure of the Carboniferous world. The relentless consumption of these ancient plants was not just survival. It was a fundamental force shaping the future of both plant and insect life on Earth. The sheer scale of Carboniferous arthropods necessitates understanding their energy intake. What sustained these giants? Their diets, though often primitive by modern standards, were remarkably efficient, converting the abundant resources of their world into the colossal body mass we observe in the fossil record. It was a powerful existence, driven by a strategic engagement with a readily available food supply. For the largest terrestrial invertebrate, Arthropleura, the evidence points overwhelmingly towards a detritivorous diet. Microscopic analysis of its gut contents, and critically, the examination of carbon isotopic ratios within its fossilized exoskeleton, suggest it fed on decaying plant matter, spores, and perhaps microbial films. This contrasts with early hypotheses of Arthropleura being a predator. By consuming the massive amounts of detritus accumulating on the forest floor, Arthropleura played a crucial ecological role. It was a primary recycler, breaking down the tough, lignin-rich plant material that few other organisms could digest, thereby returning nutrients to the ecosystem. This efficient processing of dead organic matter provided a continuous, rich energy source to fuel its immense growth. The airborne giants, such as Meganeura, occupied an apex predatory niche. Similar to modern dragonflies, their large, serrated mandibles and spiny legs were perfectly adapted for grasping and dismembering prey during flight. Fossilized wing fragments sometimes exhibit damage consistent with feeding on other insects. Their diet would have consisted of the numerous smaller flying insects of the period. The early blatopterans, paleodictyopteroids, and other ancient airborne arthropods. This high-protein diet provided the necessary fuel for their metabolically demanding flight. Efficient hunting was paramount, allowing them to rapidly replenish energy after vigorous aerial pursuits. Many other insects, like the sap-sucking paleodictyopteroids, demonstrate a focus on extracting readily available liquid nutrients from the abundant vegetation. Their piercing, sucking mouthparts were specifically evolved to tap into the vascular systems of lycopods and ferns. This specialization allowed them to avoid the challenges of digesting tough plant fibers, providing an energy-rich, albeit less protein-dense, diet. The primitive diets of these colossal creatures were not unsophisticated. They were perfectly tailored to the unique resource landscape of the Carboniferous. Their success speaks to the power of evolutionary adaptation, demonstrating how specific feeding strategies, coupled with favorable environmental conditions, can lead to the rise of truly remarkable forms of life. The Carboniferous skies were utterly transformed by the presence of Meganeura monii. Imagine a shadow, larger than any modern insect could cast, sweeping across the swampy forest floor as this colossal dragonfly ancestor patrolled its territory. This wasn't merely a large insect. It was an aerial apex predator, a creature whose flight dynamics and hunting prowess were central to the ecological balance of its era. Fossil discoveries, particularly the exquisitely preserved wings found in the coal measures of Commentary, France, have allowed paleontologists to meticulously reconstruct Meganeura's anatomy and infer its flight capabilities. With a wingspan reaching up to 75 centimeters, nearly 30 inches, Meganeura possessed 4 robust, independently operating wings. These wings, characterized by a dense network of veins, were not only structural but also housed the tracheal tubes for oxygen exchange and nerves for control, a design remarkably similar to modern dragonflies but scaled up to an immense degree. The physiology behind Meganeura's impressive flight was inextricably linked to the Carboniferous atmosphere. Flight is an energetically demanding activity, requiring a rapid and continuous supply of oxygen to the flight muscles. In contemporary insects, this is achieved through a highly efficient tracheal system, but even then, oxygen diffusion can be a limiting factor for larger body sizes. The Kardashian 35% atmospheric oxygen concentration of the Carboniferous period directly mitigated this limitation. This hyperoxic environment allowed Meganeura's tracheal system to supply sufficient oxygen to its massive flight muscles, enabling sustained powerful flight. As an apex predator, Meganeura would have been an active hunter. Its large compound eyes, capable of panoramic vision, were perfectly suited for spotting prey in the complex visual environment of a primordial forest. Studies of modern dragonfly hunting behavior extrapolated to Meganeura suggest highly agile flight, including rapid acceleration, braking, and even hovering. It would have dominated the air, preying on smaller insects, and potentially even nascent amphibians that ventured too close to the water's surface. The shadow of a Meganeura's flight was not merely a visual phenomenon. It was the embodiment of ecological supremacy, a silent testament to a world where atmospheric conditions allowed insects to reach heights of power and size unmatched before or since. The dominance of Meganeura and its kin in the Carboniferous skies was not merely a matter of size. It was a testament to their evolved aerial prowess, enabling a silent pursuit that shaped the very dynamics of the arboreal and aerial ecosystems. In a world largely devoid of avian predators, these giant griffin flies occupied a niche that later would be filled by birds, demonstrating the incredible adaptability of the insect body plan to a high-performance lifestyle. The wing structure of Meganeura, though gigantic, exhibited key adaptations found in efficient flyers. The complex venation patterns, visible in finely preserved fossils, provided both strength and flexibility, allowing for rapid and precise maneuvers. Unlike many insects today, Meganeura likely possessed direct flight muscles, meaning the muscles were attached directly to the wings, giving superior control. This, combined with the independent control of each of its 4 wings, would have afforded it exceptional agility, crucial for both catching prey and evading potential threats. For a creature of such dimensions, maintaining stability and control in variable atmospheric conditions would have been paramount, and its sophisticated wing design was key to this. The hunting strategy of Meganeura would have been primarily visual, as suggested by its large, well-developed compound eyes. These eyes offered a wide field of vision, crucial for detecting movement in the visually complex environment of a dense forest. Once prey was sighted, the pursuit would have been swift and silent, save for the rhythmic beating of its enormous wings. Its spiny legs, characteristic of predatory insects, would have formed a basket-like trap to scoop up smaller flying insects, such as the abundant Paleodictyopteroids, or smaller relatives of cockroaches. This efficient method of capture would have been vital for sustaining the high metabolic demands of its large body and active flight. The reign of these aerial giants underscores a fundamental principle of ecology. In the absence of competition, a group can diversify and exploit niches to an extraordinary degree. With no birds or flying reptiles to challenge them, Meganeura and its relatives were the undisputed masters of the Carboniferous air. Their silent pursuit and aerial dominance represent a unique chapter in the history of flight, a period where insects pushed the boundaries of their physical form, shaping an ecosystem that remains, even in its fossilized whispers, a source of awe and scientific fascination. While the Carboniferous is celebrated for its colossal insects, the same environmental pressures that drove arthropod gigantism also nurtured a pivotal chapter in vertebrate evolution: the diversification of early reptiles. Imagine the feel of primal scales, rough and protective, a definitive adaptation that allowed these creatures to truly conquer the land, bringing an entirely new dynamic to the ancient ecosystems and signaling the eventual decline of the giant insects. The key to reptilian success lay in the amniotic egg. Unlike amphibians, which had to return to water to lay their delicate, jelly-like eggs, reptiles enclose their embryos in a tough, leathery, or calcified shell. This self-contained private pond provided protection from desiccation and mechanical damage, liberating early reptiles from aquatic dependence. This evolutionary innovation, emerging in the late Carboniferous, allowed them to colonize drier, inland environments previously inaccessible to vertebrates. One of the earliest and most iconic reptiles is Hylonomus lyelli, discovered in the fossilized tree stumps of Nova Scotia's Joggins fossil cliffs. These stumps acted as natural pitfalls, trapping small animals. Hylonomus, a small lizard-like creature measuring around 20 to 30 centimeters, demonstrates the primitive reptilian form. Its robust skull, strong jaws, and sharp teeth indicate an insectivorous diet, placing it in direct competition with many smaller Carboniferous arthropods. The development of scales, an epidermal covering providing protection against abrasion and water loss, was another crucial adaptation for terrestrial life, contrasting sharply with the permeable skin of amphibians. The increasing aridity towards the end of the Carboniferous and into the Permian further favored these scaly, amniotic pioneers. As the vast coal swamps fragmented and drier, more seasonal climates emerged, amphibians found their breeding grounds shrinking. Reptiles, however, were pre-adapted for these changing conditions. This shift allowed them to diversify rapidly, filling an expanding array of ecological niches. The feel of primal scales thus represents more than just a physical characteristic. It embodies a profound evolutionary leap. It marked the dawn of terrestrial vertebrate dominance, gradually eroding the millennia-long supremacy of giant insects and setting the stage for the age of dinosaurs and ultimately our own lineage. Even as early reptiles began to explore drier uplands, the Carboniferous swamps remained a vibrant, albeit increasingly challenging arena for the struggle for survival. Here, amidst the tangled roots of giant plants and the murky waters, the colossal insects coexisted with, and increasingly competed against, a growing diversity of early tetrapods. This intricate dance of life and death determined who would thrive and who would dwindle in the shifting ecological landscape. The dense vegetation of the swamp provided both cover and hunting grounds. Giant amphibians, such as Eriops and Prionosuchus, reaching impressive lengths of up to 2 to 3 meters, were formidable predators. These aquatic or semi-aquatic giants would have patrolled the waters and muddy margins, preying on fish, smaller amphibians, and any unwary terrestrial arthropod that strayed too close. This introduced a new dimension of predation pressure on the larger insects and myriapods, creatures like Arthropleura, which, despite its size, would have been vulnerable when crossing open ground or during its prolonged molting process. The very presence of these large-bodied vertebrates challenged the ecological supremacy that giant arthropods had previously enjoyed. The Carboniferous rainforest collapse, which fragmented these once continuous swamp ecosystems, intensified competition. As suitable habitats shrank, resources became scarcer. This forced a closer interaction between the established invertebrate giants and the emerging vertebrate groups. While Meganeura still dominated the open skies, its prey, smaller insects, would have faced increasing threats from ground-dwelling insectivores like Hylonomus and other small proto-reptiles. The battle for food became multi-layered, with vertebrates competing directly for the same insect prey that sustained the large aerial predators. This ongoing struggle for survival was not a sudden catastrophe, but a gradual, relentless pressure. The increasing specialization of vertebrates, coupled with their unique physiological advantages, such as internal skeletons, more efficient circulatory systems, and later endothermy, began to tip the scales. The swamps, once a haven for arthropod gigantism, became a crucible where the future of terrestrial ecosystems was forged. The giants, both invertebrate and vertebrate, clashed and competed, ultimately setting the stage for a new ecological order where the dawn of giant insects would slowly give way to the rise of the reptiles. The world of giant insects was not a static, unchanging tableau. It was a dynamic environment governed by powerful climatic forces. Among the most influential of these was the rhythm of the monsoons, seasonal wind shifts bringing torrents of rain to vast continental interiors. During the Carboniferous and early Permian, the unique configuration of the supercontinent Pangaea amplified these climatic patterns, profoundly shaping the ecosystems where these enormous arthropods thrived. As Pangaea continued its assembly, consolidating most of Earth's landmass into one giant continent, its sheer size led to a pronounced continental climate effect. The significant land area, far from moderating oceanic influences, experienced extreme temperature variations and dominant seasonal wind patterns. Paleoclimatic models, supported by sedimentary rock evidence such as vast coal deposits, indicating high rainfall and plant growth, alternating with sequences of red beds and evaporates, suggesting drier periods, point to the presence of mega monsoons across large parts of Pangaea. These monsoons were driven by the differential heating between the immense landmass and the surrounding ocean. These extreme seasonal shifts would have dictated the life cycles of plants and animals. During the wet phases, torrential rains would have flooded vast lowland areas, creating the extensive swamps and wetlands that fostered the luxuriant growth of lycopod and fern forests, the primary producers that fueled the oxygen-rich atmosphere. The abundance of water and vegetation created ideal conditions for the proliferation of detritivaries like Arthropleura and herbivores that fed on the rapidly growing flora. The air, thick with moisture during this period, would have allowed for efficient respiration for large flying insects. However, the dry seasons brought significant challenges. Water bodies would have receded, exposing vast areas of mud and increasing the risk of desiccation for both plants and animals. The rhythm of the monsoons thus imposed a cyclical pressure on life. Creatures had to adapt to periods of tremendous growth and abundance, followed by periods of stress and scarcity. This seasonal pulse of vast humidity and relative aridity contributed to the resilience of many insect forms and the eventual decline of the hyper-specialized swamp flora as the climate overall trended towards increasing aridity. This grand climatic dance laid down the very foundations and dictated the ultimate fate of Earth's age of giant insects. The seasonal monsoons, while vital for the growth of carboniferous forests, also brought destructive forces. The relentless floodwaters, a cyclical cleansing and reshaping agent, became both a challenge to established life and a catalyst for new beginnings. These periodic deluges, often triggered by climate and geological shifts, played a significant role in the ongoing narrative of the giant insects and their world. During the wet phases, the mega monsoons would have caused rivers to swell, overflowing their banks and inundating vast tracts of lowland. While the swamp-dwelling plants and many amphibians were well adapted to these conditions, extensive flooding could still be disruptive. For terrestrial arthropods like Arthropleura, such events might have forced migrations to higher ground or led to mortality if they were caught in rapidly moving water. For flying insects, strong atmospheric disturbances associated with monsoons could have posed significant flight risks. Paradoxically, these floodwaters were also crucial for fossilization, particularly for creating the conditions necessary for the exceptional preservation seen in many carboniferous strata. Rapid burial by fine sediments brought by floods could quickly entomb organisms, shielding them from scavengers and decay. The anoxic conditions beneath layers of water and mud inhibited bacterial decomposition, allowing for the preservation of delicate insect exoskeletons and plant structures. This process, repeated over millions of years, contributed to the vast coal deposits, the very repositories of carboniferous life. The larger consequence of these dynamic climatic shifts was the eventual fragmentation and decline of the continuous carboniferous rainforests, leading to the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. As the global climate trended towards colder and drier conditions, the mega monsoons became less reliable, and the periods of aridity prolonged. The floodwaters, once a life-giving force for the swamps, gradually gave way to more erratic patterns, contributing to the shrinking and isolation of these verdant ecosystems. This environmental pressure ultimately favored diversification and new adaptations. As old niches vanished, new ones emerged. The smaller, more generalized insects that could survive drier conditions, or those with more robust dispersal mechanisms, gained an evolutionary edge. The amphibians struggled, but early reptiles, with their amniotic eggs and scaly skin, were well positioned to exploit the newly available, drier terrestrial habitats. The floodwaters, therefore, represented not just an ecological challenge, but a geological engine of change, driving extinction and adaptation, ultimately shaping a planet reborn with new forms of life and putting an end to the spectacular reign of the giant insects. The Carboniferous period, a time of lush, verdant forests, was also a hidden kingdom of crucial microbial life, none more significant than the fungi. Imagine the faint, ethereal glow beneath the colossal trees, a silent illumination on the forest floor, the glow of primitive fungi. These decomposers, though often overlooked, played an absolutely critical role in shaping the very environment that allowed giant insects to thrive, and their later adaptations profoundly altered the Earth's carbon cycle. In the early and middle Carboniferous, the primary producers, the giant lycopods, ferns, and horsetails, evolved tough, woody structures rich in lignin. Lignin is a complex organic polymer that provide structural support in plants, making wood rigid and resistant to decay. However, the fungi of the early Carboniferous had not yet fully evolved the enzymatic machinery efficiently to break down lignin. This inability led to an enormous accumulation of undecomposed plant matter on the forest floor. When rapidly buried in the anoxic conditions of the swamps, this organic material transformed over millions of years into the vast coal deposits that define the period. This massive carbon sequestration was directly responsible for the dramatic drawdown of atmospheric CO2 and the consequent rise in oxygen levels to an unprecedented 35%, the very condition that enabled insect gigantism. However, the fungal kingdom is nothing if not adaptable. Over millions of years, selective pressures led to the evolution of incredibly specialized lignin-degrading enzymes, primarily by certain groups of white rot fungi. While these more efficient decomposers didn't become widespread until the late Carboniferous and early Permian, their gradual emergence marked a significant shift. The glow of primitive fungi might refer not only to potential bioluminescent species, but also metaphorically to their silent, persistent work of decomposition, slowly unlocking the vast stores of carbon. The presence of fungi was also likely influential on the diet of certain detritivorous arthropods, like Arthropleura. Fungi break down complex organic compounds into more digestible forms, making them a crucial link in the nutrient cycle. As fungi themselves contain higher protein content than raw wood, they could have offered a richer food source for invertebrates adapted to consume them. Therefore, the seemingly humble fungi were not passive inhabitants. Their evolutionary trajectory and ecological function were directly intertwined with the atmospheric conditions and the very existence of the giant insects and plants of the Carboniferous. Their hidden, glowing world was as pivotal as the towering trees above them, silently orchestrating crucial planetary processes. In the grand theatre of the Carboniferous, amidst the dramatic performances of towering plants and colossal insects, a cadre of unsung heroes tirelessly worked behind the scenes. The decomposers. These organisms, primarily bacteria and fungi, were utterly essential to the cycle of life, enabling the nutrient recycling that sustained the vibrant ecosystems, even as their early limitations inadvertently shaped the planet's atmosphere and the size of its arthropods. Initially, during the early Carboniferous, the decomposer community's inability to efficiently break down lignin, the tough polymer in woody plants, led to vast accumulations of plant matter. This material, instead of decaying, was buried, gradually forming the coal seams that still define the period. This process, which drew massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and released oxygen, was a profound long-term consequence of early decomposer inefficiency. Had these ancient fungi been equipped with the lignin-degrading enzymes that are common today, the Carboniferous might never have experienced its hyperoxic peak, and the age of giant insects might never have dawned. However, as the Carboniferous progressed into the Permian, the evolutionary pressure on decomposers intensified. Over millions of years, selective pressures led to the evolution and diversification of more sophisticated decomposers, particularly certain lineages of saprophytic fungi, which developed highly effective enzymes to break down lignin. This innovation gradually reversed the trend of massive carbon burial. As these white rot fungi became more widespread and efficient, they began to successfully decompose the woody debris, releasing its carbon back into the atmosphere as CO2. This shift contributed significantly to the observed decline in atmospheric oxygen levels towards the end of the Permian. Beyond their macro-environmental impact, decomposers played a crucial role in creating a nutrient-rich substrate for other life forms. For detritivores like Arthropleura, feeding on decaying plant matter already partially broken down by bacteria and fungi would have provided a more readily digestible and nutritious food source. The microbial communities, including bacteria and protozoa, present in the decaying organic matter, constituted a rich protein source in the food web. Thus, the work of these unsung heroes, though microscopically small, cascaded up the food chain, sustaining the larger invertebrates and helping to maintain the health and productivity of the entire ecosystem. Their silent, persistent effort reveals that even the most seemingly humble life forms can wield immense power in shaping the destiny of a planet and its inhabitants. In the Carboniferous world, large size conveyed many advantages, from greater reach as a predator to better defense against smaller threats. Yet, for some arthropods, gigantism was coupled with an additional potent weapon: venom. Imagine encountering the sting of an enormous arthropod, a chilling prospect in an era where such creatures were amongst the largest terrestrial carnivores. While the exact nature of Carboniferous venoms is beyond direct fossil evidence, the presence of large predatory arachnids like scorpions provides compelling inferential data. Scorpions, an ancient lineage with a remarkably conservative body plan, have a fossil record extending back to the Silurian period, over 430 million years ago. By the Carboniferous, they were well-established terrestrial predators, and some species had attained significant sizes. For example, Pulmonoscorpius kirktanensis, discovered in Scotland, is estimated to have reached lengths of up to 70 centimeters, 2.3 feet. This giant scorpion would have been an intimidating sight, its powerful pincers, pedipalps, and venomous tail, telson, making it an efficient hunter in the dense undergrowth. The evolution of venom in arthropods is a sophisticated biochemical adaptation, primarily for subduing prey and defense. In the Carboniferous, where potential prey included other large insects, early amphibians, and smaller reptiles, a potent venom would have been a distinct advantage. It allowed these predators to incapacitate prey quickly, reducing the risk of injury during a struggle and conserving energy. The hyperoxic atmosphere of the Carboniferous, while primarily associated with gigantism through respiratory efficiency, may have indirectly supported the energetic demands of producing complex venoms. The presence of such colossal venomous predators would have created a significant selective pressure on other terrestrial fauna. Prey animals would have evolved enhanced sensory capabilities to detect approaching threats, faster escape responses, or more robust armor. This arms race between predator and prey drove diversification and specialization across the food web. The sting of an enormous arthropod was not merely a threat, it was a potent force in shaping the evolutionary trajectories of countless species, adding a dangerous edge to the vibrant tapestry of life in the Carboniferous swamps, and reminding us that the ancient world was not just large, but also fraught with unseen perils. The evolution of venom is a complex biological arms race, and in the Carboniferous, the strategic deployment of toxins was a powerful tool for survival and dominance. For giant arthropods, venom was more than just a hunting aid. It represented a significant investment of metabolic energy, a trade-off that highlights the cost of life in this ancient ecosystem, balancing efficacy with biological expenditure. Venomous arthropods, such as the large scorpions and possibly some ancient spiders, faced a continuous challenge, producing venoms potent enough to subdue their prey and deter predators, while also managing the energetic cost of synthesis and storage. Venoms are complex cocktails of proteins, peptides, and other organic molecules, each requiring specific biochemical pathways to produce. Maintaining the cellular machinery for venom production and replenishing venom reserves after use represents a considerable metabolic drain on the organism. In the Carboniferous, with elevated oxygen levels, the metabolic capacity for such expensive adaptations was likely enhanced, allowing for the evolution of larger venom glands and more extensive venom usage. The utility of venom for these ancient predators was multifaceted. For active hunters, like the aforementioned Pulmonoscorpius, a quick-acting venom would disable prey, reducing the risk of a counterattack and minimizing energy spent in physical struggle. This is particularly crucial for arthropods with hard exoskeletons, where grappling with similarly armored prey could lead to serious injury. For more sessile predators, such as ancient trap-setting spiders, venom might have allowed them to subdue larger, more powerful prey that might otherwise escape or damage their traps. Defense was another critical aspect. When confronting early amphibians or reptiles, a painful or debilitating sting would serve as a powerful deterrent, signaling not worth the effort to a potential predator. This defensive use would have been particularly vital during vulnerable periods, such as molting, when the arthropod's exoskeleton was soft and its mobility compromised. The chemical composition of venoms can often be tailored for specific effects, either neurotoxic, attacking the nervous system, or cytotoxic, damaging tissues, giving predators a strategic advantage in their encounters. The development and deployment of venom in the Carboniferous thus showcases a refined evolutionary strategy where chemical warfare became a powerful instrument of life and death. It highlights the intricate balance between the investment in a potent biological weapon and its strategic benefit in the relentless struggle for survival, demonstrating that even in a world of giants, sometimes the sharpest tool was not brute strength, but a carefully engineered biochemical cocktail. The foundation of the Carboniferous ecosystem, the very environment that nurtured giant insects, was its extraordinary plant life. Imagine standing within an ancient forest, the air heavy with moisture, and hearing only the rhythmic whisper of the wind through giant ferns, an omnipresent sound that defined the botanical character of this primal landscape. These massive spore-bearing plants were the unsung titans of the Carboniferous, creating the hyperoxic conditions crucial for arthropod gigantism. While lycopods, like lepidodendron, formed towering trees, ferns also reached impressive sizes and diversity, dominating the understory and forming dense canopies in their own right. Genera, such as Psironius, were tree ferns with massive trunks, sometimes reaching heights of 10 meters, 33 feet, or more, their fronds unfurling into colossal structures that could span several meters. Unlike modern ferns, many Carboniferous tree ferns also developed robust, lignified trunks, contributing significantly to the period's woody biomass. These ancient ferns, reproducing via spores dispersed by wind and water, thrived in the warm, perpetually humid, and often waterlogged conditions of the Carboniferous swamps. Their rapid growth and sheer abundance meant an enormous rate of photosynthesis, drawing vast quantities of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and steadily pumping oxygen into it. This process, coupled with the inefficient decomposition of lignin, led to the atmospheric oxygen levels peaking at an unprecedented 35%, a critical factor in understanding the mechanics behind giant insects. Beyond their contribution to atmospheric oxygen, These giant ferns provided indispensable ecological services. Their dense fronds created extensive shade, maintaining the high humidity essential for many invertebrate and early vertebrate life forms. Their decaying fronds and trunks added a continuous supply of organic matter to the forest floor, fueling detritivores like Arthropleura and numerous smaller decomposers. They also offered complex three-dimensional habitats, shelters, and hunting grounds for a myriad of insects and arachnids. The whisper of the wind through giant ferns was not an empty sound. It was the breath of an entire ecosystem, a living testament to a time when colossal plants laid the groundwork for an equally colossal insect kingdom, defining the very air that made such giants possible. The Carboniferous period encapsulates a time of profound geological and biological transformation, painting a picture of an untamed Earth, marked by a sense of solitude and grandeur, far removed from our modern anthropocentric understanding. This was a planet still in the nascent stages of complex terrestrial life, where life forms fundamentally different from our own held sway, and the human footprint was still hundreds of millions of years in its future. The sheer scale of the landscape alone evoked grandeur. Vast, interconnected swamp forests stretched for thousands of kilometers across the supercontinent Pangaea, creating some of the largest continuous biomes Earth has ever seen. Towering lycopods, tree ferns, and horsetails formed dense, multi-layered canopies that filtered sunlight, creating subterranean worlds of perpetual twilight and humidity. The atmosphere was thick with the rich, earthy scent of decay and lush growth, a constant reminder of the planet's unparalleled productivity. In this immense, verdant wilderness, silence, as we understand it today, was absent. Instead, an alien symphony of primordial sounds would have permeated the air. The rustle of giant fronds, the chirp and click of unseen insects, the distant thud of an ancient trunk falling, perhaps the splash of an early amphibian in a hidden pool. Yet, without the familiar chorus of birds, the complex calls of mammals, or the ubiquitous sounds of human activity, there would have been a profound sense of solitude. The life within these forests was self-contained, evolving within its own unique parameters, uninfluenced by external forces beyond the geological and climatic. The grandeur of this untamed Earth lay not just in its physical expanse or the gargantuan sizes of its inhabitants, but in the sheer force of raw, unbridled nature. The very processes that created the environment, tectonic plate movements, volcanic outpourings, cyclical monsoons, were on a scale that commanded awe. Life was responding directly to these titanic forces, shaping itself in ways both spectacular and extreme. The giant insects, in their silent pursuit through these immense forests, were perfect embodiments of this untamed majesty. Their existence serves as an enduring testament to the planet's capacity for biological innovation, reminding us that for hundreds of millions of years, Earth's story unfolded without our presence, a magnificent and solitary epic on a truly grand scale. The long, sunlit days of the Carboniferous forests gave way to nights that plunged the world into a primordial darkness, punctuated by unfamiliar sounds and sensations. This was the chill of the pre-dinosaur night, a period of reduced activity for many, but a time of heightened senses and hidden dangers for others, especially for the ectothermic, cold-blooded, giant insects and early vertebrates. Thermoregulation, the ability of an organism to control its body temperature, is a fundamental challenge for all life forms. In the Carboniferous, the predominant life forms, including insects, amphibians, and early reptiles, were primarily ectothermic. This meant their body temperatures were heavily influenced by the ambient environment. During the day, the warm, humid air and direct sunlight would have allowed these creatures to reach optimal operating temperatures, facilitating rapid metabolism, active movement, and efficient hunting or foraging. However, as the sun set, the temperature would have dropped, particularly in inland continental areas as Pangaea continued to form. While global temperatures in the Carboniferous were generally warmer than today, night brought a significant thermal challenge. For large, ectothermic insects like Meganeura or Arthropleura, this would have meant a period of greatly reduced activity. Their internal body temperature would have fallen, slowing down their metabolic processes. Flying ceased, and locomotion became sluggish. This vulnerability necessitated finding secure shelter beneath large fronds, within tree hollows, or buried in damp soil to avoid both the cold and nocturnal predators. The ecological niche of night-active or crepuscular, twilight-active organisms would have been occupied by specialized forms. Perhaps certain bioluminescent insects use their glow to navigate or attract mates in the darkness. Amphibians and early reptiles, while also ectothermic, might have adapted strategies like burrowing or seeking thermal refugia, warm, sheltered spots, to maintain somewhat higher body temperatures, allowing for limited nocturnal activity, perhaps preying on inactive insects. The chill of the pre-dinosaur night was a significant selective pressure. It drove adaptations related to thermal regulation, shelter-seeking behaviors, and the temporal partitioning of activity, while the high oxygen levels sustained giant insects during the day. The drop in temperature at night imposed physiological limits, reminding us that even in a world of giants, the rhythms of the planet continue to dictate the daily struggle for survival and the boundaries of biological possibility. Far beyond the Earth's atmosphere, distant cosmic cycles served as ancient watchers, subtly influencing the planet's climate and, by extension, the conditions that enabled and ultimately extinguished the age of giant insects. These astronomical rhythms, invisible to the creatures below, played a profound long-term role in shaping the very environment that fostered these colossal arthropods. One of the most significant cosmic cycles impacting Earth's climate are the Milankovitch cycles. These describe the collective effects of changes in Earth's movements on its climate over thousands of years. They include variations in the eccentricity of Earth's orbit, how elliptical or circular it is, the obliquity of its axial tilt, the angle of its tilt relative to its orbit, and the precession of its equinoxes, the wobble of its axis. These cycles alter the amount of solar radiation received at different latitudes and seasons, driving glacial interglacial periods and influencing global atmospheric and oceanic circulation patterns. During the Carboniferous and Permian periods, as Pangaea was assembling, these Milankovitch cycles would have continued to operate, albeit against a backdrop of warmer global temperatures and high atmospheric CO2. The cyclical changes in insolation, while perhaps not triggering full-blown ice ages, would have amplified seasonal variations and influenced the rhythm of the monsoons discussed earlier. Increased solar radiation during certain orbital configurations could have led to more intense wet seasons, further promoting the growth of the vast coal forests. Conversely, periods of reduced insolation could have exacerbated arid conditions, contributing to the fragmentation of these forests and the subsequent decline in atmospheric oxygen. Furthermore, long-term solar variability, such as changes in the sun's output, although less understood for such ancient epochs, could also have played a role. Any subtle fluctuations in the energy reaching Earth would ripple through its climate system, affecting plant productivity, sea levels, and ultimately the atmospheric composition. These cosmic cycles, acting over vast timescales, were the silent orchestrators of Earth's climate system, providing the slow geological pulse against which life evolved. They were the ancient watchers, ensuring that even in the primeval forests, the fate of the giant insects was intimately linked to the grand celestial dance of our solar system, a reminder of the universe's ultimate influence on terrestrial evolution. For hundreds of millions of years, life on Earth has been punctuated by periods of profound change, often culminating in mass extinction events. While the Permian-Triassic extinction is widely recognized as the most devastating, the late Carboniferous and early Permian bore witness to a more subtle, yet equally significant, shift for the giant insects. A faint but undeniable scent of extinction, gradually pervading the atmosphere and reshaping the planet's ecosystems. The primary driver behind the decline of insect gigantism was the well-documented decrease in atmospheric oxygen. From its peak of approximately 35% during the Carboniferous, O2 levels began a steady descent towards the end of the Permian, eventually stabilizing closer to modern concentrations. This prolonged reduction was multifactorial, linked to the Carboniferous rainforest collapse, the drying and fragmentation of the vast coal swamps due to continental assembly and associated climatic shifts. As these forests receded, the massive carbon burial that fueled oxygen production diminished, and the evolution of more efficient decomposers, particularly white rot fungi, accelerated the return of carbon to the atmosphere as CO2. For a group of organisms whose immense size was directly supported by hyperoxic conditions, this decrease in available oxygen presented an insurmountable physiological challenge. The tracheal respiratory system, efficient as it was, became a limiting factor for larger body sizes. Imagine a colossal meganeura, whose flight muscles demanded vast quantities of oxygen. In an atmosphere with significantly less O2, the energetic cost of sustaining such a large body and powerful flight would have become prohibitive. Smaller body sizes, requiring less oxygen and facilitating more efficient diffusion, became selectively advantageous. This wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a slow, inexorable shift, favoring smaller forms over generations. Furthermore, the evolving terrestrial ecosystems introduced new pressures. The diversification of reptiles, better adapted to arid conditions, and with their more efficient respiratory and circulatory systems, meant the emergence of formidable predators and competitors for resources. These increasingly sophisticated vertebrates began to challenge the ecological niches once dominated by giant arthropods. The faint scent of extinction, therefore, wasn't a single catastrophic event for the giant insects, but a confluence of environmental transformations, atmospheric, climatic, and ecological, gradually eroding their reign and ushering in a new era of biological forms. Though the age of giant insects ultimately waned, their legacy is indelible. Etched in stone and time, their story continues to inform and inspire, providing critical insights into the delicate balance between life and environment. The scientific journey into the Carboniferous and Permian periods reveals not just what once was, but how planetary forces shape the very possibilities of life itself. The primary legacy of these colossal arthropods is the undeniable evidence of the profound impact of atmospheric composition on biological evolution. The oxygen limitation hypothesis, largely supported by the existence and disappearance of these giants, remains a cornerstone of paleoenvironmental studies. It highlights how a seemingly subtle shift in gas concentrations can dramatically alter the rules of evolution, pushing the boundaries of physiological adaptation. The Meganeura, Arthropleura, and giant scorpions serve as living experiments, proving the direct link between hyperoxia and gigantism in arthropods. Furthermore, their fossil record provides a glimpse into an ecosystem fundamentally different from any found today. It underscores the concept of ecological niches and how these can be filled by vastly different groups over geological time. For millions of years, insects filled the roles later occupied by birds and mammals, demonstrating the versatility of life to adapt and thrive. The study of their predation strategies, their feeding habits from detritivore to active hunting, and their interactions with the nascent terrestrial vertebrates enriches our understanding of early food webs and trophic dynamics. Their demise, intertwined with the Carboniferous rainforest collapse and the subsequent decline of oxygen, also teaches us about the fragility and interconnectedness of Earth systems. It illustrates how climate change, even when naturally driven, can reshape biodiversity on a global scale. The transition from a world dominated by giant insects to one where vertebrates began their ascension was a direct consequence of a changing planet, a powerful reminder that stability is an illusion in geological time. Today, the descendants of these ancient giants, though vastly smaller, continue to dominate terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems in terms of diversity and biomass. From the intricate beauty of a dragonfly wing to the tireless work of a beetle recycling nutrients, their lineage persists. The legacy etched in stone and time is a testament to resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of natural selection. It is a story that began billions of years ago and continues to unfold, constantly teaching us about our planet's extraordinary past and offering profound lessons for its future.